told the drivers they need to get a license, and each of those drivers, not only the partner, but each of the drivers, I would be still having like maybe 1,000 cars on the street. So that's the reality. That's the problem.
And the authority is like issuing licenses is also happy. They don't have
work
to do.
Of course.
They get their salary.
Of course. Yes. So there are a number of things. I'm completely with you. I'm always the advocate of completely, legal, ethical business. And again, as I said, the problem is we're not doing anything illegal, but the way the state looks at it, it's the same thing with the actual fines. Just think about it, how much time they just recently in September finally adopted the system that allows, the cops to put the parking fine without the car owner. I mean, the system has existed in the world for the past 30 or 40 or 50 years. So what was the problem for the state
and it's
to
still not implemented?
Exactly. So what was the problem for the state to just copycat it and say, okay, let's done.
They're still certifying equipment.
You know why? You know why? You know why they didn't do it? You know why it takes so long? Because there is always someone in the Ministry of Interior, there is someone in RADA who thinks, okay, I need to make sure I am the certifier of those instruments. I need to make sure my company is the exclusive supplier. In biometric passports, same shit.
And
why biometric passports took so long? Because there is one company that prints biometric passports.
And there are people who control those guys who take money for parking.
That's exactly the point. So this is the problem, and that's why I'm saying, unfortunately, you have to adopt the business conditions in every country individually. Yes. So it's true.
This is a good example how did you crunch the system. Basically, the ethical part of the problem is a separate thing. What we are trying to discuss is here the ethical part of this situation.
Of course.
What I'm interested in is just to talk about the things on the edge, like how did you manage the money withdrawal from the particular Ukrainian account to the Netherlands account.
There is no Ukrainian account.
But let's say I'm paying the card, and in some way this money needs to be withdrawn from my account, moves to the account to the Netherlands.
We just used
okay, this technically it's clear how to do this technically. What I'm talking about is what was the legal background of all this matter.
Uber charges because in the licensing agreement with the driver, or rather with the partner, it says that Uber acts as an agent on his behalf to charge on his behalf to take money from the rider and then pass it to the driver.
And in some way, like
it's like App Store.
It's a bit like App Store. On the Ukrainian market, like you're doing this.
It's like App Store. Okay. If you think about it, it's like App Store.
Okay, got it.
Apple acts as an agent for app producers. So when you buy an app for your iPhone, you buy it.
Okay,
you buy it not from Apple. You buy it from someone else. Apple takes your money, takes their 50% commission, and then gives the rest of the money to the app producer. That's the same thing. No difference.
From the operational cost of the moving back and forth with the
there is some cost. The funds.
And in like Hryvnia to USD, USD to Hryvnia.
There are losses. At that time, we didn't care about them that much because again, the point was the growth.
And this cost was reasonable, like again versus establishing the local entity.
At that time it was reasonable, more reasonable. Because it was faster, because we could do it much faster then.
And in such case you protect your revenue from devaluation. So it's like immediately converted into currency.
It's true.
And it's a huge problem for Ukraine hedging valuation risk.
Well, they hedge it. Trust me, they hedge it. It's not a big issue. For Ukrainian companies, they know how to manage the currency risk. There are tons of instruments. It's not a huge thing, honestly. You have many financial instruments to hedge it. You can buy the currency, sell the currency. It's It's not that difficult.
Unless you're under some covenants or you have strong international compliances.
Okay, I mean, yeah, that's
Okay,
about.
we're talking about Ukrainian entrepreneurs, yes, and international transparent business, yes, who
Okay,
are not
I mean, if you
allowed to buy currency at any time it's needed.
look, if your premise is to say that Ukrainians don't do business as ethically as, say, Coca-Cola, trust me, you're mistaken.
Okay.
I know very well, too many things. They adapt their business. Is it true that they bring better business culture to the country? For sure. For sure. There is no doubt that the presence of major international companies improves the kind of the business climate in the country. For sure. There is no doubt about it. Because they, it's just this ethical and kind of regulatory cost of doing business to them is too high, versus just kind of compliance and certain processes and procedures. That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. You're right. I'm with you. In most of the cases, I always like to work with international companies rather than local companies for many different reasons. Culture, processes, procedures, etc. They're much more established, they're international, etc. But I hope you would agree with me, international companies do use their power to abuse things sometimes as well.
Like Uber used their power in New York.
Like Uber, like
Or in Ukraine.
Like Uber didn't. Uber, as I said, in Ukraine we didn't do anything, absolutely anything illegally, absolutely nothing. Okay, so to wrap it up, because I want us to go through some more things. So just in more detail, this was the supply side stories from the launch to build up to amplification and to growth. Basically, the logic was at the launch, regulatory part, partner part, the supply, supercharging the supply. Later on, building up. So the focus was building the partner base. Then amplification is growing the capacity utilization. So first, the logic was get as many cars on the road as possible. This was the the early logic. Later on, as the supply increases, improve the utilization. So work on things, how do you improve the utilization of those partners, because then you have to do things. You have to, at some point, you still have to decrease the prices, but at the same time, you have to keep the drivers happy. So the only way to do it is by improving the capacity utilization. And then once the market is mature, when both of the sides of the equation, when both of the sides of the platform are balanced, then you just basically support it and grow it equally. You don't allow one side to severely overweigh the other. Demand side, same story. So creating awareness and education, virality. I thought this was a good idea to go for business clients, and it was. The problem was Uber, and now again going back to the regulatory things. And this is not just the issue for Ukraine. In fact, this is the issue for many countries. For Poland, for example, we were fighting the same story. Since a lot of our business clients, or a lot of businesses, wanted Uber as their service partner. So it's convenient if you are, say, I don't know, Deloitte. You have a few hundred people here. They go on assignments all the time. They drive to clients. So it's easy for Deloitte to have one Uber account, corporate controlled, and everything is expensed by the card. Super.
You would need an account, local account.
No. There is nothing. I mean, we would do that. The problem is who's supplying the service. So the problem is the accounting perspective. Who's supplying the service? It's the individual partners. Right? It's not Uber.
So you would have to have a license yourself?
No. We would need to gather all those hundreds and thousands of receipts from each partner because your accounting department would never ever let you expense anything unless you have a receipt. Right? So if you come to your accounting department and said, look, I took a taxi trip, give me the receipt. No receipt, no expensing.
Right.
Right? If you go on a business trip, you take a plane, you have to bring the tickets to the accounting department. And you have to have a stamp in your passport on your way back, right? Same shit here. So, and this was the problem.
What's the problem to use the regular receipt that Uber produce?
It's not a fiscal receipt.
It's not possible because they have only local partners that might produce such receipts, but they didn't.
No, they can, but the problem is it's very complicated and it was just not worth it to do this, you know, it's just a lot of paperwork because they have to be paper receipts.
Right.
You cannot do it electronically. It has to be only paper receipt. So going back again to regulation, reality, us wanting to do it. I had a line of clients who wanted to do it. Like literally, I had lots of clients, lots of corporates who said, can you service us? But the problem is, like, can you imagine, you know, any partner who would be interested in producing, you know, thousands of paper receipts for the rides? Why would I bother doing that? I would rather grow my non-corporate base rather than focus on doing those paper receipts, etc. So yeah, I mean, it's a problem, you know, in accounting standards, Ukraine lives unfortunately in 19th century, and so we couldn't do it. So we just didn't go for it. Anyway, so now the last part, last but not least, everything is good, but you have to show the, you know, you have to show the money. So the last piece was my financial model. So this was the kind of pre-model summary. I said this was my projections, half a year to a year, week 1, week 26, week 55, in terms of rides per week. Week 26 means half a year. So our assumption, my kind of safe assumption based on some metrics was that this is where we're going to get at half a year. This is where we're going to get at the end of the year. Just to give you the perspective, this is what we had in week 3. This is what we had at the end of 3rd month. So by the end of half a year, we were doing double this number.
What else was the turnover per month?
I cannot tell you.
Why
It's
not?
probably
It's a company.
Because it's absolutely legal and transparent.
Yeah, but it's a private company. Uber does not disclose its numbers.
Okay.
So how did you?
So I mean, that's why I said, unfortunately, I cannot distribute this presentation because, you know, even though it's my presentation, it's not Uber's. It's a private company, and Uber is very careful. I mean, because you can learn a lot. You know, if you're a competitor. Of course.
Simple math.
Of course. That's exactly what I did. Remember when I was doing my market sizing? So yeah, so this was the final piece. I did the financial modeling, basically, with all of the key elements. You know, trips per hour, capacity utilization, you know, etc., etc. So lots of data, everything which was kind of assembled in the previous slides, now went into the model on a weekly basis. So these are weeks. So up to the week of 26, the model basically shows where. So the assumption was that by the week 19 we would eliminate the subsidies. More or less that assumption would have held true. If not for Yandex, which entered the market exactly 3 weeks after we entered. Speaking about subsidies, Yandex spent on their market entry about $3 million. I know that number because they were hunting me at that time to join them. They were paying in early days, they paid 3,000 to 10,000 euros per month to car owners to drive on Yandex.
3 to 10.
1,000 euros per per month to drive on Yandex. So if you remember their launch, you remember there were like Jaguars and Lexuses with Yandex branding. Yeah, those guys were receiving between 6,000 and 10,000 euros per month. Yeah.
So there's the possibility to take Jaguar.
Yes, for 25 hryvnia. For 25 hryvnia. Yeah. I mean, they did a good job, and to be honest, if they weren't banned, if not for the regulatory, I'd say Uklon would not have survived. So when we came in, that was the first wave. When Yandex came in, they understood that the only way they could kind of get a market share from us was to undercut us on both sides. So they were burning two sides of the candle. They burned on the supply side, so they were subsidizing heavily the drivers. And they burned on the demand side, meaning that the prices were extremely low, so they were subsidizing the riders, right? Because 25 hryvnia, they undercut it by about 50%. Our minimum ride at that time was 40. They did 25, which was completely economically unviable, but it was the only way they could enter the market. I can tell you, the dispatchers, so the dispatchers who survived our entry were dying by a day when Yandex came in, literally. So like dispatchers were closing like this on a daily basis when Yandex came in and just killed the rest. Because 25 hryvnia for a ride, and they were just burning the field completely.
Dumping.
Yeah. Why not?
Just to gain the market share.
Of course. Of course. I mean, again, now this is the thing. So there is nothing wrong with that if you use your market power to get what you want. If you think about it, why is Coca-Cola successful? Why do they have such a big market share? What's the biggest barrier to entry for anyone who wants to do a soft drink in Ukraine, say?
Distributors, maybe.
Exactly. Shelf space, right? So you have to be, you can, for example, you can do equal amount of money on the marketing side, on the advertising side, okay? Potentially. But the last mile is the shelf space. So in order to be like Coca-Cola, you have to be wherever Coca-Cola is, right? You have to be in all of those little stores, in all of those Ashans and everything. Now what happens? You come to Ashan, you are the producer of Ukrainian cola, equally good quality, really good quality. You come to Ashan and you say, look, I want to be sold in Ashan. What does Ashan tell you? Pay me.
Agreed. Well, pay for some place. Yeah.
Exactly. Pay me.
Yeah.
Pay me.
But it's not.
What does Coca-Cola? Coca-Cola comes to Ashan. No, I forgot. Coca-Cola doesn't come to Ashan. Ashan comes to Coca-Cola. Right? Why?
Because
There are such KPIs that dollars per shelf.
Return.
Yeah.
Return. Turnover.
If Coca-Cola has this turnover.
I mean, Ashan has limited. It's real estate. It's limited shelf space.
Yeah.
So if here you have, like 10 bottles, and those 10 bottles turnover is, I don't know, like 3 a day. So you sell 30 of those in one day. Right? They know how much they're going to sell because it's Coca-Cola. Because people know Coca-Cola, people kind of it's marketed and everything, right? But if you're a Ukrainian cola, Abalone cola, whatever, maybe you will be selling 2 per day, occupying still same 10 spots on the shelf. That's the thing. So most cases, Ashan says, no, thank you. We'll give you maybe 1 space, not 10. And guess what happens if you're Coca-Cola and you have 10, and you're Ukrainian cola, you have 1 space, what's the consumer going to choose?
Coca-Cola. Except those who are fans of.
Exactly. Is it abusing of the market power? Of course it is. Of course. Coca-Cola, I mean, it's no different than subsidizing the drivers. It's the same story. It's the same story. Okay, so that's it. So basically, kind of, again, the whole point, why, the whole reason why I wanted why I wanted to share this with you was to kind of to share the kind of the complexity of the logic. So going from top down to the actual, kind of getting to the raw. How does the overall market understanding then translates to the actual, the actual business launch? So that understanding the market context, understanding, doing the pastel, and understanding the market context in terms of the overall market context and the specific market niche in online, then understanding the product, understanding the product's economics, understanding supply side and demand side, and then kind of translating all of that and saying, okay, does it make sense? Yes, it seems it does make it makes sense. It seems that the model works, economics works, and yeah. So
and you said you own some company, like Uber partner company
in Moscow.
Was it before or after?
Yeah, before, of course.
So you were sort of aware of more or less of how
Uber
operates.
Of course. Yes.
But now you have like bit cap or something like this.
It's a different story. Yeah, we can talk about it separately. Yeah, last but not least, I presented the key issues, so that again I understood that there are some things that I need to be aware of and address them in terms of all of the key elements of functioning of the company. These were a couple of promos that I created, kind of sample promos in terms of again doing the math. So roughly doing the ROMI, return on marketing investment. Just a couple of samples. I actually really wanted to do this, but unfortunately I left before I could do it. I thought it was a really good idea.
What do you think about Uberboat?
Uberboat? Yeah, good idea. It's a promo. It's not a product, but it's a fun thing. It's a promo. Of course, Uber helicopter. Like in Dubai, actually, it's a product. So you can literally hail another helicopter.
São Paulo,
yeah, in São Paulo as well. Yes, in São Paulo, it's also a product. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, cool. Now, let's spend a few more minutes. Make sure we're not behind schedule. Okay, we're good. Yeah, let's get back to some key theoretical aspects. I'm definitely not gonna bore you with lots of theory, especially since you might have heard or experienced all of this. But probably this is my favorite definition of strategy. I think it's very concise and and reflects what kind of the strategy is. I think this is exactly what it is. And I think the strategy is about choosing what not to do. If you think about it, it encompasses all of the key things that we talked about. If you have the strategy right, then it's about focusing all of your activities internally and externally. Internally meaning your capabilities, externally meaning addressing the right markets at the right time and with the right framework, and the rest is beyond you. You are not addressing the rest. This is the problem for most of the companies in terms of, who are not successful. They are trying to be too many things for too many people. They're not focused. For our next session, you'll have a case on Ryanair, which is like it's a must do MBA case at most big schools, and I really like it, even though it's a pretty old case. I think it's like early 2000, but it's a very good case on some key concepts. And there was a description of David O'Leary, who was a CFO of Ryanair and then became the CEO, and he's currently the CEO of Ryanair. And someone described him as a man who would walk on a path, and if he saw a pot of gold which was not in his path, he would not pick it up because it was not in his path. So in many cases, if you think about it again, for us personally as well as for businesses, it's the same thing. It's very complicated for us to make choices. It's very complicated for us and for the businesses to make choices and to commit to those specific choices. And make those choices based on, again, as I said, based on our resources and capabilities, and based on what we want to be and where we want to be in the market. Planning is not strategy, definitely. Most people confuse planning. Very often organizations have the strategic sessions, which are in effect more of a planning sessions, because they are not, bless you, they're not, they don't involve many of the factors that we spoke about earlier in terms of complexity, uncertainty, etc. Many organizations, what they do, they call it strategic session. In fact, they take their previous kind of results, they take the results for the past 5 years, then they do some kind of projections with the economy, they take economy into consideration, they take etc., but that's not strategy. It's really planning. It's based on your past performance, it's based on your past experience. If those actions, they do not involve uncertainty, complexity, and they don't involve any changes in your business, it's not strategy. Then don't call it strategy. It's just planning. You will read the kind of. I don't want to stop about this too much, but basically, strategy is about people, vision, uncertainty, and resources. People first and foremost, and I never can stress this enough. At INSEAD, the graduates are given the surveys. 1 year after the graduation, 3 years, 5 years, and then 10 years. 5 years plus down the line, the single most important class that people at INSEAD identify is organizational behavior. Not finances, not strategy, not marketing, organizational behavior. I mean, it's very simple. Most of you are senior managers. Most of you understand that the further down the line you go, the upper in your responsibilities, the more it's about making other people do what you need them to do versus doing it yourself. So the further you go down in your career, the more it's important to make sure you have the right team in place. Because no matter how good your strategy is on paper, if you don't have the right team in place, everything else sucks. You can have all of the money in the world, you can have everything. If you don't have the right people doing those things, you're doomed.
In other words, how to exert power, how to be able to exert power.
How to be able, if you can say, if by exerting power you mean one way or the other, making other people do what you need them to do, yes, of course. Yes, that's what it is. Exactly. The vision, even though the world is becoming increasingly short-term, I do believe that it's important to have more or less kind of, and again, I don't like the word kind of, I don't want to abuse the word vision, but there is kind of something to it. Because all of us do have something about, our life's vision, and the companies, the good, successful companies, they do have a vision of where they want to be. Because otherwise, if you are, too short-term, then how do you decide on which resources and which efforts you need to be making in order to get somewhere? And certainly the resources, we already talked about that. One way to look at the strategy process is basically, again, a self-reinforcing kind of cycle of thinking and acting. Based on your goals, it's analyzing the industry, analyzing your company, then formulating the strategy, implementing it, and then it's again, virtuous circle. Industry, company, formulate, implement, and then again, look at what happened, implement the strategy, see how the industry reacts, and then again, adjust your goals, obviously. And the kind of key questions that really the strategic process, the strategy formulation needs to answer is, what business do we want to be in? What competencies must we develop? And how we're going to deal with competitors? That's it. So it's very simple. There is nothing more to that.
Where to play and how to win.
Yes, exactly. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what it is. Just a little bit, like 2 words on a historical perspective, because I think it's worth to kind of just have a few things on the background in terms of history, how this strategy evolved as a science. So there were 3 key stages to strategy's development. At first stage, everyone was obsessed with costs. So, and again, we'll have a deeper look into that, but the key point was, how do we optimize the costs? That was the industrial era. That was the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. That's when the majority of the businesses were big, large, hardware businesses, and the whole point was, how do we outcompete our competitors based on costs? How do we make more money by saving more? Then customers came into perspective, and scientists and strategy kind of scientists started to look at the customers. So, okay, I mean, at some point, this is more or less taken care of. There is only this much you can do about cost optimization. At some point, you cannot optimize costs more than you can. So, how do we win new customers? And so that's when the frameworks about customer acquisition appeared. This is really when the marketing started shooting off. I'm sure Tatiana did a great job talking to you about it. And this is where the P&Gs and Coca-Colas of this world really started taking off in terms of consumer marketing, but also B2B marketing equally. Because then you have to, if you're a Ford, all of your competitors know how to optimize the cost. But now, how do you sell that to, how do you sell it to more consumers? And finally, putting those 2 things together, how do you deal with the competition? So the third framework, or the third era, which I think kind of really started with Michael Porter, was about the whole point. How do you analyze the competitor landscape? Because if you think about it, the only reason anyone needs a strategy is this. If you don't have competition, do you need a strategy? Not really. You just kind of go. Because whatever you do is right. You cannot screw it up too much, unless you're really dumb. But if you don't have competition, you don't need strategy. Right? If you're NASA before Elon Musk, you don't really need to think about it, or Roscosmos for that matter. Now you have to, because suddenly Elon Musk starts stealing business from you. You're like, oh wow, shit, there is competition. So now we have to do something. Now we have to convince, there are customers, okay, so now we have to talk to them. Now we have to convince them somehow that launching from Baikonur with a chance of 50-50 of being able, success or not, right, it's a good thing, right? Now we suddenly have to manage the costs as well, all of that. So the only reason you need strategy is because of the competition. And again, the 4 historical drivers that really influenced the strategy as a science, and I mean as a scientific discipline, were deregulation, technological breakthrough, capital markets, and globalization. And again, you know, these are pretty kind of self-explanatory things. Deregulation started happening from some of the bigger industries in the States and in Europe in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, namely airline industry, financial industry. That's when the United States deregulated airlines. That's when the US deregulated the banking industry, because it really opened up the industries for the competition. Technological breakthrough, really big issue, or really big driver for the need of strategy, because obviously if you are right now any company, not just technological company, and you know, you've been successful for the past 10 years, and suddenly you have a newcomer who starts right now, according to Moore's law, which says that the computing power doubles every year. You know, they're already 24 times as powerful as you, 20 times, right? So they have the 20 times the production capacity and the information processing capacity than you 10 years ago. That's an error. That's you know, that's a huge divide. So again, the companies needed to make sure they stay on top of it, and they don't sleep when the competition appears and the competition introduces something completely different, and the technology allows for something completely different. Capital markets transformation was also a big factor because of the openness of the finance, partly because of this, because of the deregulation, and also because of the openness and ease of financing. I mean, you've had your finance classes, so you know that leverage is good. Again, it's a different, more complicated story for Ukraine, but on most of the markets, borrowing is good, right? So leveraging your business is good. Why?
Because cost of capital is more than equity.
That's one thing. There are two more reasons. Why do companies kind of leverage? That's one. That's the biggest one. I'm there. Why else?
Just to cut off their fixed expenses, to be more reliable.
How does leverage cut your fixed costs?
I mean, leveraging as an instrument.
I'm not sure I get it.
Okay.
That's in general, or capital markets proceeds from IPOs?
Oh, that's also important, of course, you're right. I mean, but like, just stick to leverage. Why leverage is good? Well, leverage is considered good for businesses. So the biggest one is cost of capital, yes. In most cases...
We have two types of leverages, operational and financial.
Yeah, we're talking about financial, of course, because
Okay.
we're talking about capital markets.
Fixed and variable costs for operational leverage, and financial, just to when you have an access to the liquidity, this means you have the opportunity to significantly increase your profit, and then you have that money, you are gaining a tax shield.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, tax shield, that's the other one. Yeah, that's... What's the third one?
The third one,
Maybe.
You attract money at lower level as your bank.
That's already, this was already mentioned.
So tax shield.
No, you cannot attract money lower than your WACC, because the loan goes into the WACC.
No, but I could decrease my bank.
You can decrease the WACC. Yeah,
by attracting
exactly, yes.
the loans at lower rates.
You can do that. But what's the third one? Think about it. It's more related to operational managerial stuff rather than financial, but equally important. Leverage is considered good from a managerial perspective because it instills discipline. Because
it's not the reason.
It is. Trust me.
Okay.
I mean, it's not the reason companies borrow. It is a reason investors like leveraged companies. So one of the things that is why it's good, especially like for a large public company, why people like certain amount of leverage. Of course, there is always extreme. The company can be completely unleveraged. This is perfect for an M&A. This is the perfect target acquisition for M&A. Investment houses, investment bankers love unleveraged companies. Because if a company is unleveraged, what do you do as a private equity company? You come and you leverage it. Because your cost of capital is always higher than the borrowed cost of capital. So if you buy a company that has a revenue of 100 and it's completely unleveraged, you buy it, you leverage it to the max, you lower your WACC, your revenue and your profits go through the roof. That's the perfect acquisition target. There are very few of those. And these are like gems. So investment bankers and private equity firms love those companies. But the leverage is considered like good for the business because it instills discipline. It requires the managerial discipline. It requires the focus. Because first and foremost, obviously, who do you pay for? Who do you pay? Your borrowers. These are the first payouts that always have to be made. And it has the payment discipline. So therefore, when a company makes any type of financial decision, they have to take into account, oh yeah, we have the kind of monthly installments that we need to be paid. So, if something goes wrong, again, it's a problem. That's why investors like the well-balanced leverage companies. Because again, leverage is good from that perspective. Well, globalization, it's pretty self-explanatory.
This is the rise of apocalypse.
Yeah, it's just to put I just put the picture in, to put it in perspective. The history of strategy, there were as you see, there are lots of different elements and happenings in the history of strategy. So it's considered more or less that strategy really started off as a science in 50s. Probably and you heard of Ansoff matrix, product and market matrix. The barriers to entry also appeared in early 1950s. The first significant one was SWOT analysis, and also, as probably experience curve. How many of you know the experience curve? Because this was the concept which Bruce Henderson, who founded BCG, really started selling to his clients, and it made the name for BCG at that time.
Кривая обучения?
Experience curve. Yeah, learning curve. It's the same thing. Yeah, it's experience curve and learning curve. So the history is very simple. He was studying, basically he noticed, he was working with the companies, again, as I said, if you remember the we were talking that the cost, this was the early stage, so he was working on the cost. This was the 1950s. And he noticed that, the companies do get significant cost advantage with the number of units produced. And it seems like a natural thing right now, but at that time it was really a revelation that the cost unit declines with each unit produced.
Because the labor becomes